In the year 480 BC, the greatest empire on earth stretched from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces ruled by the fierce king Xerxes, also called Ahasuerus. To celebrate his conquests, he threw the most insane feast history had ever seen. 180 full days of luxury in the dazzling palace of Susa. Golden couches, marble floors, white linen curtains, and endless wine in goblets of pure gold. Every nobleman, general, and official was invited. The king wanted the whole world to see his glory. When the 180 days ended, he hosted one final wild 7-day banquet right in the palace garden for all the people of Susa. The wine flowed so freely that the king, in a moment of drunken pride, ordered his beautiful Queen Vashti to appear before the men wearing only her royal crown, so everyone could admire her beauty. But Vashti refused. She would not be paraded like a trophy. The king's advisors panicked. If the queen gets away with this, every wife in the empire will start disobeying her husband. Rage exploded. Vashti was instantly dethroned and banished. A royal decree raced across all 127 provinces. The search for a new queen was on. Little did Xerxes know. God had already chosen an orphan girl hiding in the shadows. King Xerxes was lonely and restless. His advisors suggested a nationwide contest. Gather the most beautiful young virgins from every province. Bring them to the harem in Susa. Give them a full year of beauty treatments, oils, perfumes, spices, and let the king choose his new bride. Among the thousands of girls marched into the palace was a quiet Jewish orphan named Hadassah. Her parents had died in the Babylonian exile. She was raised in secret by her wise older cousin Mordecai, a Benjamite who served at the king's gate. Mordecai gave her strict instructions. Never reveal you are Jewish. Call yourself Esther instead. Esther was stunning, but it wasn't just her face. She carried a gentle spirit and quiet strength that turned heads without trying. She asked for nothing extra in the harem. The chief eunuch Hegai immediately loved her, gave her the best rooms, and fast-tracked her preparation. 6 months of myrrh, 6 months of perfumes, and still Esther remained humble. The whole empire held its breath. Who would wear the crown next? Finally, the day came. One by one, the young women were presented to King Xerxes. Each had prepared for 12 long months. But when Esther walked in, something shifted in the air. The king looked up and couldn't look away. She didn't demand jewels or special treatment. Her grace, her poise, her humble smile melted the most powerful man in the world. Xerxes placed the royal crown on her head right there. He threw an immediate banquet in her honor and declared a holiday across the empire. Gifts were sent to every province. The people celebrated Queen Esther Day. Yet nobody in the palace knew her secret. She was Jewish, a descendant of exiles from Jerusalem. Mordecai stayed at the king's gate, watching over her from afar, still whispering the same warning. Tell no one who you really are. God had just quietly slipped his secret weapon onto the throne. The stage was set. Life in the palace seemed perfect, but danger was already lurking. Mordecai sat daily at the king's gate, close enough to overhear everything. One afternoon he caught 2 royal guards, Bigthana and Teresh, whispering a deadly plan. They intended to assassinate King Xerxes that very night. Mordecai wasted no time. He rushed the information straight to Queen Esther, who immediately reported it to the king in her husband's name. The plot was investigated and proven true. The 2 traitors were hanged on the gallows, and the entire incident was written into the royal chronicles. Mordecai received no reward, no promotion, just a quiet note in the palace records. But heaven was watching. That single act of loyalty would one day save an entire nation. Enter the villain who would change everything. A proud, ambitious man named Haman, an Agagite, descendant of the ancient enemies of Israel, was promoted by King Xerxes to the highest position in the empire. Everyone was ordered to bow down and pay honor whenever Haman passed. Everyone, except Mordecai. Day after day, Mordecai stood tall and refused to kneel. The other officials warned him, "You'll get in trouble!" But Mordecai calmly answered, "I am a Jew. I bow only to God." Word reached Haman. His face turned red with rage. He learned Mordecai was Jewish and decided one man wasn't enough. He would destroy the entire Jewish race across the empire. The hatred of centuries boiled over. Haman went straight to the king with a poisoned lie. Haman stood before Xerxes and said, "There is a certain people scattered throughout your kingdom who keep their own laws and refuse to obey yours. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued that they all be destroyed." He even offered to pay 10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury from the plunder. Blinded by flattery, King Xerxes handed over his own signet ring and said, "The money is yours. Do with those people as you please." Haman immediately called in the scribes. On the 13th day of the 12th month, exactly 11 months later, every Jew in the empire, young and old, men, women, and little children, was to be slaughtered in a single day. The decree was sealed with the king's ring and rushed to every province by fastest couriers. Susa fell into chaos. The city was thrown into confusion. Sackcloth and ashes appeared in every Jewish home. A death sentence hung over an entire people. Mordecai tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and wailed bitterly in the city square. He sent a copy of the deadly decree straight to Queen Esther through her servant Hathach, along with an urgent message. "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone will escape. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows, perhaps you have come to royal position for such a time as this." Esther read the words with trembling hands. Her heart raced. She sent a reply, "Gather every Jew in Susa. Fast for me. No food, no water. For 3 days and 3 nights. I will go to the king uninvited. And if I perish, I perish." The entire Jewish community in Susa began to fast and pray. The queen prepared to risk everything. On the 3rd day, Queen Esther put on her royal robes. Her hands shook as she walked toward the inner court where the king sat on his throne. Persian law was clear. Anyone who approached the king without being summoned could be put to death unless he extended his golden scepter. Esther stepped into the doorway. The king looked up and his face softened. He held out the golden scepter. Esther touched the tip and the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request?" "Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given to you." Esther didn't blurt out the truth. Instead, she calmly replied, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet I have prepared for them." The king agreed instantly. Haman was summoned too. That night, the 3 of them dined together, but Esther still held her secret close. The banquet was perfect. Food, wine, laughter. King Xerxes leaned forward again. "Tell me your request, Queen Esther. It shall be granted." Esther smiled softly and said, "Come again tomorrow with Haman to another banquet I will prepare. Then I will answer the king's question." Haman left the palace that night floating on air. He bragged to his wife and friends, "The queen invited only me and the king. But there's one problem. That Jew Mordecai still refuses to bow to me." His wife suggested an easy fix. Build a 75-foot gallows and ask the king in the morning to hang Mordecai on it. Haman loved the idea. He had the gallows built that very night. Little did he know the king was about to have a sleepless night that would flip the entire script. That same night, King Xerxes couldn't sleep. He ordered the royal chronicles read aloud. The scribe opened the records. And there it was. The story of how Mordecai had saved the king's life from the 2 assassins. The king sat up. What honor or reward was given to Mordecai for this? The answer came, nothing. At that exact moment, Haman walked into the outer court, ready to ask permission to hang Mordecai. The king called him in. "Haman! What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Haman, certain the king meant him, answered proudly, "Dress that man in royal robes, put him on the king's horse with a crown, and parade him through the city shouting, 'This is what the king does for the man he delights to honor.'" The king smiled. "Excellent. Go do exactly that, for Mordecai the Jew." Haman's blood ran cold. He had to lead his worst enemy through the streets in the king's own glory. His wife later whispered, "If Mordecai is Jewish, you are finished." The next day, the second banquet began. Wine flowed. King Xerxes asked for the 3rd time, "Queen Esther, what is your petition?" "It will be granted up to half the kingdom." Esther finally spoke the truth. "If I have found favor, grant me my life and the lives of my people. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. The man who has done this is Haman." The king's face turned to fury. He stormed out onto the palace garden in rage. Haman, terrified, fell on the couch where Esther was reclining and begged for mercy. The king returned at that moment and shouted, "Will he even assault the queen in my own house?" The servants immediately covered Haman's face. One of them pointed, "The 75-foot gallows Haman built for Mordecai is standing at his house." The king roared, "Hang him on it!" Haman was executed that very hour on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Justice was instant. But the first decree could not be revoked. Persian law was unbreakable. Esther fell at the king's feet again, weeping. "How can I bear to see disaster fall on my people?" Xerxes gave her and Mordecai his signet ring. They wrote a new counter-decree. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the Jews in every city had the legal right to assemble and defend their lives, to destroy any armed force that attacked them. The decree was sealed and sent by fastest horses across the empire. The Jewish people in every province rejoiced. Many non-Jews even converted out of fear and respect. Mordecai left the palace wearing royal robes of blue and white, a gold crown, and a purple cape. The city of Susa shouted for joy. The 13th day of Adar finally arrived. Across 127 provinces, enemies rose to attack the Jews, but the Jews defended themselves with courage. In one day, 75,000 attackers fell. In Susa alone, they defeated 500 men plus Haman's 10 sons, who were later hanged on the same gallows. Crucially, the Jews took no plunder, and they fought for deliverance, not greed. Mordecai and Esther wrote letters establishing an annual festival called Purim, named after the lot that Haman had cast to destroy them. Every year they would feast, rejoice, give gifts to one another, and help the poor. The day meant for destruction became the day of deliverance. God's name is never mentioned once in the entire story, yet his fingerprints are on every page. The timing, the sleepless night, the honor reversed, the gallows turned against the enemy. Esther the orphan became Esther the savior. Mordecai the gatekeeper became second only to the king, and the message echoes through the centuries. You may feel ordinary, overlooked, or afraid right now, but perhaps you too have been placed exactly where you are for such a time as this.